Parak Arba Mises Bezdin, Daf Samach Hey, sponsored the Refuah Shlema for Daniel Tzvi ben Yocheved. We begin with the Mishnah. The Mishnah Gemara define necromancers prohibited by the Torah, liable to stoning as stated, Lo yimatze b'cha v'shoel ov v'yidoni. One who inquires of them is liable to lashes as stated, Al tifnu ela avois ve'el hayidonim. Number one, Baal Ov is Pisom, a necromancer, raises one from the dead who speaks with a faint, lifeless voice out of his armpit or one of his joints or resides on his male member. If the inquiry was to a skull, the dead responds without attaching itself to a part of the body. Number two, Yidoni, is one who takes a bone from an animal called Yadua, places it in his mouth, and the dead person speaks from it. A question. The first Mishnah in Greece mentions 36 transgressions liable for kares. It excludes Yidoni. Why? The answer. Rabbi Yochanan answers, since both are included in the same prohibition, unlike the other 32:4 that one must bring a carbon for each transgressed, one carbon suffices for Ov and Yidoni. The Mishnah in Krisus excluded Yidoni because Ov is mentioned first in the verse. Reish Lakish answers it is a lav shein bo ma'isa. The Torah states concerning an inadvertent prohibition, V'im nefesh achas techata bishgoga ba'asosa, achas mi mitzvus Hashem, v'hevi karbano. One is liable for a sacrifice only for a transgression involving an action. Therefore, the Mishnah excludes Yidoni. Placing the bone in his mouth prepares. It is a hechsher avera. It prepares him to sin. When the deceased speaks, he does nothing, whereas he claps his arms for Ov to speak. He disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan's reason because as one is liable to the death penalty for transgressing, either intentionally, as understood from the disjunctive of O Yidoni, similarly, one should be liable to a sacrifice for transgressing either inadvertently. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Reish Lakish because the Mishnah increases as Rabbi Akiva, who requires no action for him to be chayiv. Proof. The Mishnah B'Krisus brings the dissenting opinion of the Rabbanan that a blasphemer is not liable to a sacrifice because it is a non-action transgression. Despite this, Rabbi Akiva holds him liable. The disproof. Reish Lakish holds Rabbi Akiva does not require a Maisa Rabbah, but he does require a Maisa Zuta, a minor action. The blasphemer shapes his lips. The Ov claps his arms, but the Yidoni does not perform even a minor action. The Rabbanan disagree with Rabbi Akiva. They explain the inadvertent transgressor brings a sacrifice for Ov only if he performs a major action, either burning incense to the demon appointed to raise the dead, or to conjure him for his assistance in raising the dead. A blasphemer is not liable not because shaping his lips is not an action, it is no different than bowing, considered an action. However, blasphemy depends not only on what he says, but his intent to blaspheme Hashem. Since conjuring falls under the category of a different prohibition, chover, using incantations to conjure up creatures of all sizes, the Gemara digresses to explain a related halacha. One cannot conjure creatures to prevent them from harming others, but if they are chasing him, he can use incantations to save his life. Rava explains the law exempting Edim Zomim from a sacrifice for unintentional false testimony. Testimony is different than blasphemy. It is based purely on what the witness says, not their intent. Rabbi Yochanan should hold them liable to a sacrifice for shaping their lips to testify. Rava answers the primary aspect of their testimony is the intangible sound of their voice needed to communicate their testimony. A question. One who muzzles an animal or prods two different species to plow by yelling is liable. To create the sound, he performed the action of shaping his lips. Witnesses should be liable for false testimony as well. Consequently, Rava redefines the essence of their testimony. It is witnessing the incident involving no action. A question. A verse mentions both Shoel Ov Yidoni v'Dorish El HaMesim. What is the difference between them? The answer. It refers to one who starves himself, goes to a cemetery hoping a spirit of impurity will rest upon him to perform sorcery. Definition of Ma'oneh. Number one, Rabbi Shimon explains one takes 7 kinds of male seed, passes it over his eyes to perform magic. Number two, the Chachamim explain it to refer to a magician who creates illusions of the impossible. Number three, Rabbi Akiva explains it refers to one who calculates horoscopes. Definition of Menachesh, one who determines events that represent bad omens based on superstition, or determine whether one should set out on a journey or enter a business venture based on the movements of certain animals. If you're enjoying Daf 5, please click on the link below, subscribe, and become a sponsor. Thank you.